Hi, friends. Welcome back to Transform the Now. I'm Dr. Nathan Pallai with my buddy, Dr. Tucker Boyle. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. You, Nate?
Dude, life is good. Life is good. Going through a bit of a cold spell in North Carolina in the mid 50s. Like it's a tough, hard knock life here.
It is tough. I feel for you. We were at 15 degrees in Utah.
First world problems right here, man. Hey, so this is something we've been talking about this week, is this idea of acceptance, that the idea that we can't effectively deal with something. Let's say like you have some car trouble, and you can't deal with the problem until you correctly identify it and accept it. And so we want to talk about this idea of acceptance in our lives. And so Tucker's brought along a special guest for us here. So Tucker, take us through this. Let's start the conversation, man.
Yeah, you bet. We're excited to have Jordan Harmon with us. Jordan is a good friend of mine. And Jordan, do you want to introduce yourself really quick? Tell us what you do.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad to be with you guys here. I've known Tucker for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. I don't know how long it's been. But yeah, so I'm a therapist, a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been doing that for about 15 years. And I've been super excited to kind of be involved in the field of therapy that is really balancing acceptance strategies with change strategies. A lot of times people go to therapy to change something in their life. Something in their life isn't working, whether the way their thoughts, their emotions, their actions, or the whole dynamic or relationship. So most people are coming to change something. And one of the big insights in therapy in the last 20, 30 years is just how much deep wisdom there is and scientific, like practical helpfulness to incorporate more acceptance strategies, be they under the name of mindfulness or non-judgmental awareness, acceptance, those kinds of things. So that's kind of the specific therapies I do are called dialectical behavior therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy, so DBT and ACT. And so I'm lucky because every single day I'm helping people every day practice acceptance strategies to help them change that stuff, just like what you're talking about, Nate.
Dude, I love that, like, you just drop a whole bunch of lines. I'm like, I feel like we got our show enriched already right there. But no, like, I love that you can bring us some practical and scientific experience to this. I think that's really, I don't know, I'm excited to learn more here, man.
Yeah, maybe let me ask this question. So people come in wanting to change. How would you describe what is the role of acceptance in facilitating change?
I think Nate spelled it out perfectly. I mean, this is actually in one of the manuals the skill manuals I'm giving to clients. When it talks about acceptance, it says you can't change anything unless you accept it first. Right? You have to be aware of something, identify it, and acceptance in this usage doesn't mean you necessarily like it or agree with it or approve of it. It's kind of a deep acknowledgement of the reality of the situation. And we don't always have all access to all the facts or all the, all parts of reality, of course, but there are parts that we do have access to. And the things that are more painful, things that we don't like, the things that we wish are different are the things that we, whether consciously or not, reject, suppress, avoid, don't want to think about, kind of like, I wish this was different or whatever. That would be some sort of maybe reality rejection or lack of acceptance. So basically, you can't change something, unless you accept it first.
Yeah.
Which is what Nate basically said at the beginning with the car metaphor.
Yeah. One of the things that, as I think about acceptance, is there is, the opposite of acceptance, I guess, would be resistance or rejection, right? And I want to change my life situation. But like I'm coming in maybe to you for a visit, and I'm in a hard situation where I'm experiencing pain. And so immediately when I hear you've got to accept it first, there's barriers that come up for me, right? And because it's like, if I accept it, then I can't change it. So there's this paradoxical relationship here where actually it has to go the other way. So how do you help people lower barriers that they have toward
Yeah.
accepting reality?
Yeah, I probably would never tell someone, especially first with me, like, well, you're paying, here's what you got to do. You just got to accept it.
Yeah.
You just got to let it go, and then because in some ways, then I'm not accepting their pain, right? Because I'm telling them what to do. And this is why this is not a new insight in therapy or even in just human relationship, that deep listening, empathy, validation is something that's so healing when you experience that from another person. And in some ways, you're experiencing acceptance from someone else. So therapists are trained to establish really some core conditions in a therapeutic environment to create this environment where the person feels accepted, feels heard, right? Like, so a therapist doesn't like that the client is in pain or distress, but they're saying, I hear that this is so painful for you. It makes sense that you're feeling so much pain because of what you told me about this, or because of what's happening here. This totally makes sense that you're feeling this way. And so in that sense, you're modeling acceptance. You're not just saying, go do this, go accept this, you might say that, and maybe that would work for someone. I haven't found that to be helpful to start off like that, but more create a relationship where you're accepting the other person. And then there's oftentimes more of a sense, well, what do I do? Or how do I change? Or even if they're not asking that, just feeling accepted, people kind of relax into something. And sometimes the answers that are there kind of bubble up for them themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when it's really simple, when it's like, oh, they just needed to be heard, and they might not need to come back again. But then the people I'm working with are people who have had chronic suicide ideation, and they've had 20, 25, 30 years of just behavioral learning into super difficult, like they're doing the opposite of the serenity prayer. They're trying to always change the things they need to accept, trying to accept the things that they actually could change. And it's just caused all sorts of problems. So they usually are in therapy for like a whole year.
Right.
But some people just need someone to listen to them for a little, like a short time, and move on.
That's beautiful. So almost the third person, if you call it that, third person acceptance models their first person acceptance that they need to have, and experiencing that can open things up.
Sure.
Can I just say, like I just want to restate, when we say acceptance, we're not labeling or judging anything as, hey, this is okay, or this is permanent, or this is something moving forward. We're just looking at the reality of the situation and being able to say, hey, this is real, and being able to accept the reality of the situation. We're not trying to say, hey, you've got to accept these bad things in your life. You've got to like have them be permanent, but just say, hey, this is real. And so I don't know if that's helpful to restate or just share that right there. But
I think so. I think a lot of people hear acceptance and they're like, wait a minute. So it's something that we're often restating in that same exact way with clients that we're working with.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, I wanted to invite Jordan to take us through a little transformative practice where we can learn for ourselves how to work with our own acceptance. So do you mind doing that, Jordan?
I'd love to. So I talked to Tucker about, he asked me last night, and I was like telling him, and I'm like, why don't I just show you? Let's do this. So in the DBT therapy, we have a bunch of skills, and some of the skills are called reality acceptance skills, which it's cool to hear you, Nate and Tucker, as I've talked and heard both of you've mentioned that kind of accepting reality. So there's several reality acceptance skills. There's a skill called radical acceptance, which is kind of accepting the facts or the reality of the past and the present. And then, just like you said, not that everything's going to stay the same, but like accepting likely possibilities. And then that helps us clarify what we can change. The skill I'm going to take you through today is called willingness, where we're moving from willfulness to willingness, which is kind of like, it's more of the preparing you for action part of radical acceptance. So that it takes you through actually all the reality acceptance skills, and you do it kind of with your body and your mind and your, body, heart, mind, whatever.
Man, you're speaking our language.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, I'm gonna list off what willfulness is, and you just kind of think about a time or specific time when you have felt this way, this kind of willful way, and then the practice is we're gonna move from willfulness to willingness.
Okay. As you take us through this practice, is this something where you usually have somebody kind of close their eyes and and just go into their own space
Yeah.
while you do it?
And I'll do that. I'll direct you when it's time to kind of
Okay.
close your eyes. And it will be somewhat of a guided meditation or
Okay.
guided exercise.
Great.
So before we do that part, I'm just going to read to you what willfulness is. So willfulness is refusing to tolerate the moment. Willfulness is refusing to make changes that are needed. Willfulness is giving up before it's time to give up. Willfulness is the opposite of doing what works. Willfulness is trying to fix every situation. Willfulness is insisting on being in control. Willfulness is attachment to me, and what I want right now. And so we want to hold that willfulness in a non-judgmental way, which is hard, but just to say that's a normal thing that happens for all of us. We will experience willfulness, and it tends to be less effective in terms of what works in our lives. So we're going to practice moving from willfulness to willingness. So go ahead, and listeners can do this too. You can go ahead and think of a time, whether today or this week or sometime you remember, where you've experienced some type of willfulness, whether it's the controlling type where you're trying to fix everything, control everything, or the type where you're kind of giving up before it's time. You can close your eyes if that helps you and kind of think of that. And then if you're willing to, kind of put your body in the kind of position as best as you can when you're feeling that way. Like it might be your arms crossed and your hands clenched in a fist, or if it's the kind of willfulness where you're kind of giving up before it's time to give up, it might be slumped over in your chair, like you're going to kind of just turn into a puddle on the ground and say, there's nothing I can do. So kind of let your body be in that willful pose. And we're going to practice just observing the physical sensations of willfulness. Observing the thoughts that come up as you sit in this posture of willfulness. And try to observe it non-judgmentally, just curiously. Noticing thoughts, emotions, physical sensations. And see if you can just really deeply and radically accept that in this moment, you're noticing and remembering, maybe feeling some of this willfulness. You don't have to agree with it or approve of it or like it, but just allow yourself to say, this experience right now is. And now see if you're just willing to be willful right now. Rather than fighting willfulness with willfulness, we're going to meet willfulness with willingness and be willing to feel this. Maybe even tighten your fists more. Or cross your arms over your chest even more defiantly. Just be willing to feel it. And now see if you can just subtly turn your mind, now that you're willing to be willful, turn your mind to be willing, period. And as you do that, see if you can remain sitting upright with your posture, but relax your shoulders a little bit, relax your neck, relax your arms, your hands. Stay sitting upright, allow your body to relax, and allow your hands to fall open, palms up on your lap. And turn your attention to your face, your facial muscles, starting with your forehead. See if you can relax your forehead muscles, your eye muscles, your cheek muscles. If you need to tense them first and then relax them, you can do that. Relax your mouth muscles, your chin muscles. And then notice the corners of your mouth, both the left and the right corners. See if you can subtly bring them upward into what we call a half smile. It's kind of a subtle Buddha-esque like smile on your mouth. And just hold that half smile and this willing posture. Notice if you start to breathe a little differently. Now see if you can kind of contact the deepest wisdom stored in your mind, body, spirit, and ask this question of that deepest, wisest part of you. What is needed about this situation? Or just what is needed from me right here, right now? You can go ahead and bring yourself back to, we three of us can bring ourselves back to this shared space. And that's going from willfulness to willingness.
That's beautiful. What a powerful practice. Thanks for taking us through that, Jordan. Can I ask you this? Like, what have you seen happen for individuals as they go through that practice? What have you witnessed as an observer?
On a very practical note, I've noticed people go from feeling overwhelmed about their life or a relationship or whatever is going on that's causing them extreme distress to, oh, I need to just go grocery shopping, or I need to go take a shower. Like, it's super practical in terms of what works, but on another level, there's the sense of I can do this. There's a sense of the capability and the motivation, or the ability and the willingness to like live. And it is very much your podcast, right? This is called Transform the Now. It's very much about like, oh, right now is this place that's so unique, this presence that has this openness to where there's this place to be still and this place to act, and there's this kind of possibility space between just being and doing, and willingness to me is a good name to kind of bridge the acceptance and change kind of dialectic.
It was interesting for me as I was going through that I encountered some resistance inside of me that I didn't know was there. And all of a sudden that became apparent. I was like, oh, like this isn't going to lead me to anywhere that I want to be, this feeling of resistance. And so sometimes for me, resistance is so unconscious. It's so hard to even sense until a practice like that. And then you find it and you can let it go. And there's a freedom that comes. Nate, any thoughts from you?
Absolutely. I just agree. I love the stance of openness that he talked about, willingness, possibilities, like that. That's a good way to live, man. I like that. But I do notice that naturalness when we're practicing, what did we call it before that stance of closed off? What was that?
Willfulness.
Willfulness, man. I think that's in my DNA. Like, let's fight. Like, I want some blood feud here. Like, and like, there's the contrast there was pretty distinct for me.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. I was telling Tucker that one of the clients I've worked with, so a lot of times doing this will bring your willfulness up. It's like, heck no, I'm not going to let go of this thing. And one of the people I was working with, she innovated and she brought up willful hands. And for her, willful hands, because it's willing hands have smile, willful hands was for her 2 middle fingers up in the air, you know. And we had a good laugh. And she said, I did that, and then I, you know, did that as long as I needed to, and then I slowly opened and relaxed. And she's like, that helped. Like, it helped her to honor and accept the part of her, right, that was resistant. It's like, I'm going to love that part of me. That doesn't mean I'm going to like it or approve of it or enable it, but I'm going to love it and pay attention to it so that it can relax.
Yeah, that's powerful. In me, I've even noticed like acceptance, that it's always available when I find myself in a negative space and I'm like, I know I got to accept this. I can accept the fact that I'm not accepting something. And then that non-acceptance is then transmuted into acceptance.
Yes.
And it's like acceptance is always in the background available, but so invisible unless we like kind of stop and notice in the moment. So
yeah.
Well, and I would just say, like, as you practice this throughout the week, I'm not talking just us three, but anybody listening, like, just look for those opportunities to accept reality and see what happens to your capacity to deal with that present moment and move forward there. Any other thoughts before we close, you two?
Well, I don't know if the listeners could hear the piano music or the kids in the background during this, but that gave me a really great opportunity to practice willingness, because I was like, oh man, we got to stop this and start over or whatever. And I was like, okay, there's my willfulness. And let's go willing. And that's just how life is. Like, life is not going to roll out perfectly. The situations, if we're trying to control life into what we want it to be, you'll just have constant resistance, right?
Right.
And so the practice of acceptance came up for me during our acceptance practice, and I was like, oh, that's another chance to practice that. So
yeah, beautiful.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks, Jordan, for being with us.
Thank you guys. This is awesome.
Like Nate said, what an enriching presence to have with us. So we're so grateful for that. And I'm excited to practice acceptance more and more in my life and see how it opens things up.
Thanks, friends.